You know what you should do? You should have Brian do a subscriber form critique.
Yeah, so you should stop being a bitch.
This is a single leg squat.
Way more.
This is a single leg squat. That's what
to be fair, if you watch my squat from the front, it doesn't look too much different. What is going on, guys? Welcome to the joined, featured, I don't know what you want to call it, the YouTube Q&A between my good friend here and I, Evan Glassgold.
I'm Evan.
For those of you who don't know Evan, you might want to give an introduction. Just tell people who you are, what you're about.
Yeah, so my name is Evan. I've been competing in powerlifting for 4 years. I have competed at the past 3 nationals and won those in the teen class. And I went to Worlds back in 2017 or 2018, I forgot.
2018, right?
2018, Calgary. Yeah.
Yep.
And I am planning on going back this year, but who knows? I am coached by Matt Cronin. A lot of people who are following this channel probably know who he is. And I have been vegan for about 1.5 years now. And yeah, so that's about it. That's everything about me.
That's everything. Everything anybody needs to know.
Correct.
So Evan and I have been training in my dungeon for the past couple weeks now that things are starting to calm down. We both know that we don't have coronavirus, which is very nice. And we are also both prepping for the same meet that, fingers crossed, will be happening in 8-ish weeks from now. It'll be 8 weeks from Saturday. But we thought it'd be an awesome idea to do a Q&A together. You guys have seen a couple Q&As that I have done, but looking through the questions that we've received, and this was my expectation, we are going to have very different responses to this. So without further ado, let's get to some of the questions. And the first one is from our good friend Khan, who asks, how much does a beard add to the total? And because it's obvious who has the better beard here, I think I'm going to take the lead on this one.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
No, go for it.
Okay, so I've actually sat down and I've tried to calculate this and figure it out. There's quite a bit more science that goes into it than I think a lot of people would assume, and it's not all benefits, right? So you're going to see a solid plus maybe 10% in just idiot strength, right? So you're going to be stronger, right? Definitely. But along with the beard, lifters typically tend to decrease in their ability to make good decisions. So they're going to kind of just lift like idiots, but be a little bit stronger. So depending on how that is, taking place in you as an individual and how good your beard actually is, we could see anywhere from, I'd say maybe a -5 kilos on the total to, some people, like if I didn't have the beard, I probably would be totaling probably a solid 30 kilos less. So you can see some pretty big changes due to that.
For sure, high risk, high reward there. I am not gifted in the beard department, unfortunately, as you guys can see this pathetic excuse for a Tony Stark mimic. Evan and I definitely have different answers to this next question, because him and I have actually spoken about this before. But what info do you track? Lifting, wellness, readiness, etc., and how do you organize it? So I know that there are some things that you track, like health metrics, that I don't. So you can go ahead and answer that first.
Yeah. So basically, I try to track almost everything I can. I wear a Fitbit. You guys can sponsor me if you want. That'd be really cool. If Fitbit wants to sponsor me, they probably won't. Fun
fact, I have to cut you off there. Actually, so when I was at MIT, I went to the career fair once, and gave my resume to Fitbit, and I was a mechanical engineering major, and I remember talking with that, like we had a long talk, me and the recruiter, probably for like 15-20 minutes about Fitbit, about what my experience was, and the conversation ended the way that it should have started, with her asking what my major was. And I told her after our whole conversation I was mechy, and she was like, oh, we're only looking for coders. And that was it. I literally was just like, I'm going back to my dorm. Like that, I think for anybody watching this who went to MIT, which is probably very few, almost every career fair at MIT is like, you got to be course 6, which is computer science or electrical engineering. Like it's tailored for them. But anyway, sorry, continue.
Okay. So, yeah, like I said about the Fitbit, their app, for anyone who's used it, is really easy to use as far as tracking things goes. So using this, I track my resting heart rate, I track my blood oxygen levels while I'm sleeping, I am tracking I use their app to track water sometimes, typically when I'm closer to competition, just so it makes it a little easier for when the water cut comes around to kind of know how I ration my water throughout the day. I track, did I say sleep?
No, you haven't mentioned sleep yet. You mentioned blood oxygen while you sleep, but you didn't say anything about sleep.
So it tracks my sleep quality by just like seeing where my heart rate is, how much I'm moving around, things like that. I'm very kind of adamant about tracking my steps every day because, people who kind of like have seen me compete and stuff, like I dropped down a weight class, and for me, like maintaining that body weight's not entirely the easiest thing that I do. So I'm pretty on top of a lot of those types of things, and as well as like food, obviously track my macros.
Cool. My answer to this is much less exciting. That's why I let Evan go first. The only real thing that I track are my macros and calories. And I mean, the reason for this is, maybe I definitely could do more. I don't really see too much benefit for me personally to track stuff like steps or hydration, just because I'm very consistent with drinking the same amount every day. I usually get in like a gallon of water, and I kind of go based off of feel, which I know is usually a stupid answer, but like it's pretty obvious to tell when you're not drinking enough water. Like the sensations you get from not drinking enough are very concrete, and you'll know very quickly. But yeah, I pretty much just track macros. My sleep quality, I definitely would be interested in tracking, something that maybe I should take a page out of Evan's book and start quantifying, because I do wake up a fair bit during the night. But usually if I get, at least the time from me falling asleep to me finally getting out of bed in the morning, as long as it's around 8 to 9 hours, I usually feel pretty good. I'll never experience any of those, sleep-related fatigue signs. And then just to reiterate, like I don't track my activity level usually, just because I'm never as far from weight, as Evan might be at some times of the year.
Yeah.
Where that it merits me, trying to up my activity level, or, looking at my calories and being like, fuck, why am I so heavy? I usually am within range, and my calories are usually matching my expectations, or I know why my weight is where it is based on my intake. So,
and one more thing with that is there are actually like quite a few other things that I track, simply because I use the app Chronometer to track my macros. And if you use that app, anyone who has would know this, it automatically tracks all your micronutrients, and it makes it super easy to put into like graphs to observe trends and whatever. And obviously for most people it's a little overkill, but with like being a vegan and having sort of I guess you could say a weird diet, to me, I just like to know if something's going on. I can kind of look at that information. It's all there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and it's just because of the app that I used, it just makes it that much easier. It's just as easy to track, like all of the different vitamins in the food I eat as it is to just track the macros and just scan the barcode. Yeah. So yeah, Chronometer's sick.
This next question is also for you, Evan, because I am not vegan. What are some of the main things you incorporate into your diet as a vegan?
Yeah, so vegan diet, right? Can it be more expensive? Can it be just as easy to get protein? You're kind of going to get one or the other, right? Like it's much easier to get protein if you're going to be spending a lot on your food. And for me, I don't exactly have the best, I guess you could say, discipline with tracking macros. For me, it's not very easy to do. Diet's something I'm not entirely naturally very good at being on top of, so I try to make adherence as easy as possible. So I do spend a little more money on types of food. So with that being said, I'll buy a lot of like the Boca veggie burgers. I'll do a lot of Boca chicken burgers. Boca's just a brand. They're all vegan burgers. Do a lot of tempeh. I think tempeh is out of the sort of like tofu, seitan. I think that tempeh is the easiest one to cook, at least in my experience. I just coat it in hot sauce and throw it in the toaster oven. It's really that easy. I eat a lot of rice and beans. a lot of cereals. The Kashi cereals, the brand's name is Kashi. They have a line where there's like 10 to 14 grams of protein per serving of each of the cereals. So that's something I also rely on. I found that with getting protein in, before I was a vegan, I would have like a few different sources of protein, right? So I would have, most of my protein comes from when I have chicken breast at dinner, and I would have like an insane amount of chicken breast, and then I'd have a protein shake and Greek yogurt, and it's like those three things. Whereas now the strategy is more, can I find things that I'm already eating that just have a little more protein, right? So like just switching the type of bread I eat, just switching the type of cereal I eat. Those kind of, I've found, are the most effective strategies to get protein in as a vegan.
I think that's a really good insight there with, in terms of how it can help people in general with dieting. Like, even if you're not vegan, oftentimes like setting yourself up for success and being able to adhere to things is easiest when you make things as easy for yourself as possible, right? Like, a lot of people who struggle trying to really fine-tune their diet or make positive health changes would have a much more difficult time completely overhauling their diet and switching things up. Whereas if you can make, little changes, like Evan said, like if you switch the type of bread that you're eating, where you're getting, 10 grams more of protein every time that you eat bread, or maybe you eat like the Kashi, I think it's like Go Lean, right?
Yeah, Kashi Go
Lean cereal.
The pumpkin one's the best. It doesn't taste like pumpkin, but that one's the best.
If you replace your Fruity Pebbles with Kashi Go Lean, right? Like, all these little wins that you can accumulate while being minimally disruptive to what you perceive as your diet, right? It's, you're more likely to have success with that.
Bottom line, you don't get points for making it harder on yourself.
This is true.
You're just going to lose points because you won't do it as well.
Oh, this is a good one. This is going to be a long one for both of us, because I think we're both going to have multiple answers. Favorite bang for your buck movements / accessories for movement competency and variability. I am going to stratify this and organize it so that I can be as succinct as possible in answering this. So I'm going to give you guys each a, corrective movement and a variation of a lift that I do, and I'm going to do it for each lift. Okay, so in terms of warming up for squats, I think split squat isos or long split squat holds as like a pre-squatting movement are fantastic for helping you to be able to load the hips better. Isometrics are also great for tissue resiliency. In terms of a variation of the squat, I love belt squatting. I could go down the same road and say split squats. I do think for movement variability, they're obviously a fantastic option if you have trouble loading a certain hip, which I think becomes a very frequent problem for a lot of powerlifters, where they kind of lose some of that joint action in the hips. It helps recapture some of that range of motion. But bang for your buck, I love belt squatting. I think a lot of people watching me to this point know that, especially for me, where I can't get the kind of volume that I need for my squat to progress solely from squatting. The belt squat's fantastic. For bench press, corrective movements, any sort of reaching drill or arm bars, you can use like a kettlebell or a dumbbell and just go through rotations on your side, are phenomenal for warming up for bench. And then in terms of bang for your buck accessories, a Larson press or a hook lying bench press are fantastic. I think Evan will be able to expand more on the hook lying when it's his turn. And then for deadlifts, I really like the 90-90 hemi bridge as well as glute bridge isos. And then for variations of the deadlift, I mean, RDLs are fantastic. I think I've answered this in a Q&A before, where somebody asked if I could only do one exercise for the rest of my life, it would probably be an RDL. I just think that it's a fantastic, fantastic exercise. That's my answer.
Okay, so in order to avoid putting my foot in my mouth, I'm going to keep this somewhat brief. So for the squat and the deadlift, I think that picking a movement to really focus on, other than the comp lift, would be how can you sort of reinforce a better movement pattern for those lifts, right? So for me, when we say deadlift, I'm gonna think conventional deadlift, because that's what I do. I have more experience with it, right? So for the conventional deadlift, I think something like a trap bar deadlift with the lower handles, I think that's pretty underutilized, just because in terms of how much easier it is to get a good hinge position. And since it's far removed from the barbell loaded conventional deadlift, you're probably not going to have the same sort of getting in your head about the loading of the bar. So you can really kind of focus on getting those better movement patterns. And if you can get the better movement patterns on something like the trap bar deadlift, and it's with the lower handles with an even longer range of motion, it's very likely that that'll carry over to conventional. And that's something I've found for my conventional has been absolutely key, right? Like, a lot of people tend to think of sumo as an extremely technical lift. Conventional is not. I don't think that's any farther from the truth. I think they're both equally technical. It's just easier to get away with a bad conventional. So I would definitely say the trap bar deadlift, maybe even a deficit trap bar deadlift if you don't have one that's got like lower handles. For squat, I would probably say something like a tempo split squat Zercher. I say that for pretty much the same reason as I say the trap bar deadlift, because when you see, like, at least when I see a lot of people squatting, I think the biggest issue is they have a poor time. They have a poor ability in maintaining a good relationship between their rib cage and their pelvis, right? I think the Zercher squat, I should say, puts you into a position where it's much, much easier to maintain that. And if you can do an accessory, again, that's far enough removed to where you're not really freaking out about the weight on the bar, and you can practice those better movement patterns, you can sort of be like, okay, this is what it feels like to have my rib cage and my pelvis in a good relationship. Let me think about this when I warm up for squat, and let me keep it, right? And I think, again, same with conventional deadlift. It's key to be able to, I guess, move more proficiently. I say split squat simply because just get a little more variation. That's pretty much it. Practice loading the hips better.
Yeah, I think the takeaway from those comments, you know, in terms of what your preferences are, I think a lot of people, very dogmatic, you know, coaches or PTs or whatever, they look at some of these variations as like overthinking things, and in reality, it's making things easier. And I think that once you look at things as the movement pattern themselves, and rather than just like, okay, this is far removed from a low bar squat, like, why are you doing this? It has no carryover. When you really view it as the pattern, right, I think that it makes it a lot easier to understand why you do it. With reference to the trap bar deadlift or the Zercher split squat, you are removing a lot of necessity for cueing. These movements are so much more intuitive. To coach somebody through a trap bar deadlift is infinitely easier than coaching them through a conventional deadlift. To coach somebody through a Zercher squat is infinitely easier than coaching them through a low bar squat. You remove so many barriers for proficiency, and you establish constraints that allow you to execute the movement properly as easily as possible. There's very little thinking that goes on when you get into a trap bar deadlift or when you get into like a Zercher split squat, for example. So if you're continuously loading the right pattern and rewarding it over and over again, right, that's what lifting is, you're continuously rewarding the same pattern over and over without having to cue it, really. At first you might not get the carryover. I think it's foolish to think that you can, grab a set of dumbbells, do a split squat, and carry that pelvis relationship over to a low bar squat. But over time, you're going to recapture joint range of motion. You are going to build a better context and understanding for a movement pattern, because it's become so subconscious, or unconscious rather, because you're just going through the movement. You don't, I could put you on a trap bar right now, and I guarantee you're not going to have the same compensatory strategies as you would trying to set up for a conventional deadlift or a sumo deadlift. So, the movements are far removed from a competition lift, but in reality, they are much more simple. And I think keeping things simple is the way that you really hammer away at what you're trying to establish. And now that we've answered something incredibly technical, we're going to do a much more lighthearted question, which is favorite dog breed.
Oh, German Shepherd, not even a question. Well, I should say that with a caveat. Caveat? Did I say that right?
Caveat, yeah.
Caveat, yeah. if I didn't have a German Shepherd, it would probably be the Caucasian Shepherd. I've sent Sean pictures of these dogs. They're like 100-kilo dogs. Dude, they're insane. If you don't know what that dog is, look it up. They look like bears. They're called like wolf killers. They're insane.
You know what dog I love? Fucking, what is it? The Tibetan Mastiffs?
Yeah,
those
those are
things
sick.
are fucking bears, dude. My favorite dog breed. I love German Shepherds. I definitely want to have a German Shepherd at some point. For those of you who don't know, I didn't have any like furry animals growing up. My brother and I'm very allergic to cats. My brother's very allergic to dogs. So never had like traditional pets growing up. I had snakes and lizards. So that's my dude. I love snakes.
Get a load of this guy.
But my favorite dog breeds probably German Shepherd, Newfies. I know Daniela really wants a Newfie. They're super fucking cute. Yeah, I would probably put those in my top 2.
If you guys don't know about my dog, you just send me a DM. Go on my Instagram. Always happy to talk about Lars. Absolute beast. Would fuck most people up.
You should follow. Doesn't Lars have an Instagram?
Yeah, but I posted on it once. Maybe if your subscribers want me to, I'll get that active again. But it's Lars the Conqueror. I don't know if there's like an underscore or anything in it, but if you look that up and see a German Shepherd, that's my dog. So yeah,
dope.
I'll probably start posting on that again.
Is it possible to increase from 265 pounds to 320 pounds in 2 months on the bench press? Yeah. It's also possible that you don't.
How many months was it?
2 months. I mean, dude, it's like these questions are... So I've gotten questions like this a million times. I'm sure Evan has too, where people just, come to your DMs and ask some arbitrary, can I do this? It's like, I don't know anything about you. So you very well could bench like 340 in 2 months, or you might be stuck at 265 for the next year. I have no idea. It totally depends on your sensitivity to training. It depends on your training history. It depends on your genetics. Like, there are plenty of people who start powerlifting and blow up, and then there's people who start and they just never get strong. So the only answer that is valuable in this scenario is to just keep training hard, train bench press multiple times a week, take frequent singles, leave some reps in the tank on your volume. That's it, man.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to say probably not. Most people will not do that. But if you want to make this your goal, I implore you to do so. But then look at what are the inputs you need to get that output. And then you got to actually do it, right? It's easy to say it's your goal. And I mean, yeah, like you probably could if you really, put everything you could into your sleep, everything you could into your nutrition, you trained as intelligently as you could. I think that's the thing that most people can't do. Not that they can't increase their bench by a crazy amount in a short period of time. So I hope you do. And you better train like you're going to. Yeah. Tough guy. If you don't, I'm gonna fuck you up, man. I don't know who asked that, so don't take it personally.
Okay, here we go. This is a good one. Would you ever consider moving up a weight class?
Yes, all the time. I think about it every single day. Yeah, it's always on my mind. Do I want to continue doing this where I have to diet all the time and cut a ton of water weight to make 66? I mean, all jokes aside, my goals as far as my powerlifting career goes, there's a lot more that I want to do at 66, but I just don't think that I could accomplish all of my goals in this weight class. So we're going to see me probably stay there for another 1, 2, maybe 3 meets, but I can almost guarantee you that by early to mid 2021, I'll probably be competing as a 74. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Evan is gonna do some crazy shit at 66, and I think it'll do him really well to move up as well, because it takes a toll on your body, having to stay down in a class.
My life sucks.
I have a kind of different answer. I'm very comfortable staying as an 83. I usually walk around 3 kilos over the class, which, I can lose all of that through water. I could even decide to lose less of it from water and some from food manipulation. The only real thing keeping me as an 83, or I guess 2 things are, one, I kind of like my level of leanness that I'm at right now. Like, if I had to guess, I'm probably 12, 13%. I feel like that's a decent place to be for health and just my own vanity. And the other thing is obviously competitiveness. Like I really want to win the 83s, and I know that, Russ has been very dominant for years now. I have my work cut out for me, no doubt. But that's the main thing keeping me down in this class. Like I really want to win the 83s. And then I think, my goal is, my long-term goal, and I say long-term, I don't plan on staying in powerlifting, till I'm a master's or anything like that. But my reasonably long-term goal is I want to win 2 weight classes. I want to win the 83s and I want to win the 93s. So my very immediate goal is to win the 83s. And then at some point after that, I want to move up to the 93s. I'll obviously be a little bit fluffier, but I think still be able to maintain some relative leanness. And I think that we see very often that lifters who are experienced and still relatively lean, that moving up a weight class is like roids. Like their lifts blow up. The people who come to mind are, Connor Borkert, Charlie Dixon, Chance Mitchell, Bryce Lewis, all these guys who were obviously very strong when they were down in their previous weight classes, but were stagnating a little bit. And then once they moved up, their lifts just blew up. So that's something I definitely want to take advantage of in the future, just because I know that my absolute strength as a 93 would be immensely higher than what it could be at 83. I'd essentially have 20 pounds to play with, which would be, it'd be fun to see what I'd be able to hit as a 93. Would you rather never be able to wear socks or never be able to take them off?
No socks ever. How's that even a question?
Yeah, I think I'm with you, man. Why would, keeping socks
I'll just wear different shoes. Like, are you kidding me? Who asked that?
I don't know who this is. I've never seen this Instagram handle before. But, yeah. Would you rather never be able to wear socks or never be able to take them off?
No socks, ever. I'll just wear different shoes. I don't even think shoes are a good idea in the first place. Like, if you've seen me wearing these ridiculous little sandals, because I don't think that shoes are good for you. All right? I don't believe in socks, period. I'm mad we got asked that. I mean, whoever asked it, like, what do you think? What do you think? Put in the comment section below. Would you rather right answer or wrong answer? You already know, I don't even have to say it.
Numbers when you first started powerlifting. Go for it.
So the first thing I did when I got into the gym was bench press, and I loaded up 135 with like no warm up or anything, just because I was like, less than 1 plate? Is that even weights? So I think I did that for 3 and then failed the 4th rep. So that was my like very first time that I lifted squats. I didn't start squatting until I was like a year in. I hit 305 pretty quickly, but it was like a quarter squat, maybe like a 6th squat, I think is a little more accurate as well. And deadlifts, I think I deadlifted 365 my first time deadlifting. I didn't train them at all, actually. And one day my brother, because we were at an LA Fitness, right, and I have a brother, Josh, who's like just a year and a half younger than me. So he comes up to me, he's like, how much can you deadlift? I was like, I don't know. He's like, my friends bet me that I could deadlift more than you, or something like that. I was like, you probably can't, because I lift weights and you don't, right? Which is common sense. So then, that kind of turned into me figuring out that I could deadlift 365. I think it was my first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I had a very opposite experience of you, because I was coming from a baseball background where, while it is, not entirely useful to be training your upper body as a baseball player, I do think that when I was growing up and the things that I was told weren't necessarily true. Like, we pretty much avoided upper body training at all costs, which is obviously not at all the right way to go about it. Like, if I had like an actual, proper upbringing, like my strength and conditioning coach for baseball was great, but that was more later on. Originally it was just like our coaches telling us what was the smart thing to do. So when I first started lifting weights, I did almost exclusively lower body stuff. I squatted a lot, front squatted a lot, trap bar deadlifted a lot. Pretty much anything like most traditional baseball players, when they're growing up, you're probably going to see a ton of them front squat, a ton of them, trap bar, deadlift. I competed in my first meet after a few months of training, probably like 7 months of training, 6-7 months of training. I did my first meet and I squatted 470. I benched like 240. I remember I took a jump from like 240 to 275 and got stapled on my second and third. And then deadlifted 515, but that was on a deadlift bar. So yeah, those were my first numbers. I will say that I didn't, that's definitely not going to be the case for most people. Like, I think more people start off with more reasonable numbers, but I've seen plenty of people come into the sport with lower numbers and end up with higher numbers. So it's, the potential is not where you start. It's where you finish. This is a very good question. This is something I'm going to be talking about with my interns, who I will be picking very soon. Is block periodization the best and most efficient programming for strength? So to give you guys a debriefing on what block periodization is, it's a way that you structure training such that for a specified period of time, each lift has a specific goal. So like the typical style of block periodization is like you'll have like a hypertrophy phase, a strength phase, a power phase, and at all different points, obviously the rep ranges and consequently the percentages of your 1 rep max are different. And I don't think that it is necessarily the best and most efficient way to program for strength for a couple of reasons. The first one being that, I think daily undulating periodization is a very common way to program for people, which basically means that you could be accomplishing multiple goals within the same microcycle, right? So instead of just doing, 8s for, or some comparable hypertrophy rep range for a specific period of time, you could be doing like 8s and 3s in the same week. And I think, when you program, or rather when you train each lift multiple times a week, you're going to be programming in that DUP style. And there have been studies conducted where, volume equated, the DUP group outperformed the block periodized group. But that's not even the most, significant reason to me why I think it's not the most efficient. I just think that being that dogmatic about your programming is just not always good, and sometimes it's bad. I actually spoke about this in my taper video. I think that segmenting your training like that is old-fashioned. I think that a lot of coaches who are just not in the know will do it a lot more frequently than some of the more successful and perceptive coaches. And the reason I say that is you don't always get stronger at your 1 rep max by training specifically close to your 1 rep max. There are so many times where you can be training in like a strength block and your training goes to shit. Whereas like you could be training in your hypertrophy block and during that block, like your 1 rep max is going up. Like not even your 10s are getting better, but like you might have a single at some point, and that goes back to the DUP thing. Like you might have a single in that training block and like, holy shit, I'm getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I think that programming and coaches would be much better served blurring the lines between blocks a lot better. I think that far and away the most important thing is finding a microcycle that works for a lifter. I think the microcycle is the fucking bread and butter of everything. If you can find a microcycle that really works, then the little tweaks are what bring you into a meet or bring you into an off season. Shifting so drastically from one block to a next is like very, like I'd picture like the kinesiology major who just studied for the CSCS programming that way. And it's for some lifters, shifting, just making a hard right turn from a hypertrophy block to a strength block, they might see great progress. But I think for the majority of people, like finding a frequency and a microcycle and a schedule that works really well for a lifter, and then just kind of blurring the lines and making those little tweaks as you progress through a block is far, far more successful of a way to train. And of course, during that, if you're training each lift multiple times a week, chances are you're going to be kind of mixing the rep ranges, right? One day you might have 8s, another day you might have 3s. And then, as I mentioned, there are always exceptions where you have some lifters who like their 1 rep max truly progresses. Like, it actually gets better when they are exclusively doing higher rep work. So yeah, I don't think block periodization is the most effective way to train. I think you have to be able to analyze data. I think that when you make the decision to program first and analyze second, it's when you do your clients a disservice. I think you have to really look at how things are moving, and then you make your decision after that.
Yeah, I think I can't really disagree with anything that Sean said. And I don't really think there's much I can contribute to it. Probably a more Sean-directed question. So, yeah.